Our second full day in Tennessee, we went to Clingman's Dome, which is the highest point on both the Smoky Mountains and the Appalachian Trail. After a long, slow ascent in a car, gaining a spot in the limited parking lot was not guaranteed, and it felt like winning the lottery. Explanations of what we were looking at were printed in both English and Cherokee. This was Cherokee land, and the Cherokee Nation lies 26 miles away. Some of the mountains on the approach had an arresting color contrast between bright, vivid green and darker green trees, and we eventually discovered that the darker colored spruce and fir trees grow only at a certain elevation. The views of the mountains as we walked up to the observation deck were some of the most amazing on the trip. The visibility from the observation deck has been reduced 40% since the 1940s or 50s because of haze traveling from Ohio as a result of coal burning. On the way down, we encountered a woman also on the descent who was encouraging the people who were tired from hiking up. She kept telling weary hikers that she and her husband were pushing 90, and if they could do it, you could too. As we walked down with her, she told us that she was originally from a small dairy farm in upstate New York, but had also piloted the Staten Island Ferry as it carried cargo at night, because any small farm needs an outside source of additional income. She and her husband, originally from a Midwestern dairy farm and also a ferry pilot, have a house nearby. When she heard we were from New York, she said she was going to make one more trip to New York City because she wanted to see Grand Central Station one last time. On our way back to camp, we picnicked at waterfalls. The next day, we broke camp to drive to Asheville, North Carolina, stopping at the Folk Arts Center along the way. It is the permanent home of the Southern Highland Craft Guild. There were photos and explanations, outside of the building and in, of how the Blue Ridge Mountain Parkway and the encouragement of Appalachian crafts were part of the WPA and New Deal in the 1930s. Filled with contemporary quilts, ceramics, furniture, household items, baskets, carvings, jewelry, and clothes, the museum also displays a permanent historic collection. The relationship between past and present Appalachian artisans made a strong impression on me. Asheville is cool. The night we arrived, we tried to get into an Indian restaurant where they don't take reservations over the phone or online. When we went in person, we were told it would be an hour-and-a-half wait, so we gave up. We tried again for lunch the next day, and it was only a half-hour wait if we were willing to sit at the bar. It was the best Indian food we have ever had. Our first stop in the morning was the Asheville Museum of Art. It was well curated, and I took a lot of pictures because I'll never get to see that stuff again. There was an exhibit about food and also a Buckminster Fuller exhibit, since he had taught at the nearby Black Mountain College. Black Mountain College emphasized holistic learning and an interdisciplinary approach. When the Nazis closed the Bauhaus in 1933, many professors found a welcome there. When we later wandered the streets, I saw a monument to Elizabeth Blackwell, the first woman doctor. My childhood heroes were Harriet Tubman and Elizabeth Blackwell. I was delighted to see that Elizabeth Blackwell had started her medical studies in Asheville. Of course she had! Something of this whole ethos permeated the museum. While we were waiting to be seated at the bar for the 5-star Indian food, we wandered into a lovely community gardens where we met 2 volunteers. One South American man had studied English at NYU in the 70s and played soccer in the pickup games that are still all over New York City. He was a co-creator of a tri-ethnic restaurant, which became an overnight sensation after a Village Voice review. The woman had been an activist, and she called Asheville a uranium enrichment site. She rattled off a list of places not more than 2 hours away, including Oak Ridge in Tennessee. Now, gardening was her activism. The man had strong political sentiments as well. A lot of people seem to come to Asheville from elsewhere. The woman who registered us at hotel reception was from Pasadena, California, and an employee Ernie met in the hotel parking lot had been born in Harlem, raised in Jamaica, Queens, but moved his family to Asheville. We finished off the day by exploring the River Arts District near the river, hugging the train tracks, housed in old warehouses. Lots of murals and brightly colored studio fronts. Lots of paintings and crafts. Bear in mind, this is still the Blue Ridge Mountains in Appalachia. Our last full day in Appalachia was spent at the Biltmore Estates, belonging to the Vanderbilt family. I was less interested in a modern-day chateau than I was in the running of such a large household in an upstairs-downstairs arrangement. The gardens were astonishing. Normal run-of-the-mill flowers and plants were juxtaposed to create something visually unusual. The greenhouses were organized by type of flower and simply stunning. I'd never seen some of the species contained there. Frederick Olmsted, who designed Central Park in New York City, also designed these grounds. After breakfast the next morning at Pack's Tavern and one last drive and amble downtown, we left Asheville in Appalachia to drive on normal, fast, ugly highways to Durham, North Carolina. We stayed with good friends who had relocated there years ago from our neighborhood, Hell's Kitchen. They live in a beautiful red house down the street from a Montessori school, and they had created a labyrinth in their front yard from over 700 bottles. I flew home from Durham to LaGuardia Airport while Ernie continued his travels. There was more ethnic inclusiveness in Appalachia than I had experienced when I was a child, but I was reassuringly awash in ethnicities as I took the bus from LaGuardia through Queens and Harlem, at home in my port city. I missed Appalachia, so I bought and read Barbara Kingsolver's beautiful book, Demon Copperhead. Peace be with you.